10 Best 90s Action Movies to Ever Grace Our Screens. The Crow, 1994. The 90s were a great decade. Coming out of the 80s, music was at its peak and action movies were a booming business. For anyone growing up in this time, it's hard to narrow a list of great entertainment down to 10, but here we are. Of all the fantastic movies that came out in the 90s, here are the 10 best to ever grace our screens. 10. Desperado, 1995. IMDb. This American contemporary flick was Western written, produced and directed by Robert Rodriguez. It is the second installment in Robert Rodriguez's Mexico trilogy, and meant as a sequel to the 1992 film El Mariachi. It stars Antonio Banderas as El Mariachi, who seeks revenge on the drug lord who killed his lover in the previous film. With brilliant set pieces filmed entirely in Ciudad Acuña, Mexico, this movie is a blast from start to finish. The action-packed film also includes cameos from Steve Buscemi, Cheech Marin, Quentin Tarantino, and Danny Trejo. With a budget of $7 million, the box office went crazy with over $25 million in viewings. Official meets with a U.S. enemy of the state, 1998, an NSA 9 congressman in a public park to discuss support for a new piece of counterterrorism legislation that dramatically expands the surveillance powers of intelligence agencies over individuals and groups. Remaining committed to blocking its passage, the NSA official and his team murder the congressman and plant evidence to suggest an accidental death. In the aftermath, they discover that a wildlife researcher had his camera aimed in the woods at their location and has footage of the truth. What follows is a thrilling game of cat and mouse with brilliant acting from Gene Hackman and Will Smith. 8. Face Off, 1997. This science fiction action film, directed by John Woo, stars John Travolta and Nicolas Cage as FBI and terrorist nemesis who transplant their faces in order to gain information against the other person. It's a wacky premise, but coupled with the signature stylized action of John Woo, Face Off is an iconic film from the 90s that those who have never seen it still recognize. If you're a 90s baby and still haven't seen Face Off, it's about time to join in. 7. Ronin, 1998, the sleeper hit of this list. Ronin stars Robert De Niro, Jean Reno, Stellan Skarsgård, Sean Bean, and Jonathan Pryce as a team of former special operatives. The team is hired to steal a mysterious, heavily guarded briefcase, and what follows is a maze of shifting loyalties and double-crossing that will leave you wanting more. Praised for its realistic car chases in the streets of Europe and complicated plot, film critic and historian Stephen Prince called this film director John Frankenheimer's end-of-career masterpiece. 6. The Rock, 1996, the second Nicolas Cage hit on this list. This sophomore film by Michael Bay follows a group of rogue U.S. Force Recon Marines, led by disenchanted Brigadier General Frank Hummel, played by Ed Harris. After acquiring deadly nerve gas and rockets, they seize control of Alcatraz Island. The Pentagon and FBI develop a plan to retake the island with the U.S. Navy SEAL team, enlisting the FBI's top chemical weapons specialist, played by Nicolas Cage. The FBI is forced to offer a pardon to federal prisoner John Mason, played by Sean Connery, in return for information, as he is the only Alcatraz inmate ever to escape the island. 5. Total Recall, 1990, YouTube. With an estimated budget of $50 to $65 million, Total Recall was one of the most expensive films made at the time of its release. Loosely based on the Philip K. Dick short story We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, Total Recall tells the story of a construction worker, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who suddenly finds himself mixed up in espionage on Mars. Schwarzenegger's character is then unable to determine if the experiences are real or are the result of memory implants. Remade in 2012 and released with mixed reviews, this Special Effects Academy Award-winning film is a roller coaster that will leave you questioning what is real right until the end. Die Hard with a Vengeance, 1995, Collider Everything is Better with Samuel L. 4. Jackson. Fresh off his cult success in Pulp Fiction, he joins Bruce Willis and Jeremy Irons in what would become the highest-grossing action movie of 1995. Toy Story came in first place in case anyone was interested. Seeking revenge for the death of his brother in the first film, Simon sends the protagonists on a chase throughout the city of New York to dispose of threat after threat. The Crow, 1994, also known as the film that killed Brandon Lee. 3. This supernatural superhero movie, based on the 1989 comic book of the same name, was way ahead of its time. This moody and foreboding story is something more akin to the dark and gritty remake movement currently sweeping through Hollywood. The Crow tells the story of Eric Draven, a rock musician who is revived from the dead to avenge his own death, as well as the rape and murder of his fiancée. This film opened at the top of the box office and has continued to amass a strong cult following. 2. Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991, the second Schwarzenegger title on this list. Terminator 2, Judgment Day was written, produced, and directed by James Cameron. Its visual effects were revolutionary for the time. The film had breakthroughs in computer-generated imagery, including the first use of human motion for a computer-generated character, and the first partially computer-generated main character. It was a critical and commercial success and has greatly influenced popular culture, especially the use of visual effects in films. It received several accolades, including the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. The highest-grossing film of 1991 and of Schwarzenegger's career, Terminator 2, Judgment Day has since been named by several publications, such as the American Film Institute, as one of the greatest action films, science fiction films, and sequels of all time. 1. The Matrix, 1999, March 31, 1999, would mark the day that university and college philosophy classes would change forever. No film before, or since, has been so universally scrutinized and dissected as The Matrix. Starring Keanu Reeves, this film depicts a dystopian future in which reality, as perceived by most humans, is actually a simulation created by sentient machines to subdue the human population. All the while their bodies' heat and electrical activity are used as an energy source.